A lot of times in sports, a lot of people are going to look at the people who really exceed as rookies, the people who from the get-go are winning, are competing for championships, and really who are just impressing everybody. But what about the guys that do that or do some form of that and then get worse the next year? Yes, today we are going to be looking at the top 10 NASCAR sophomore slumps. Now, there's a few things I'll say before we get started. The big thing is you got to compete in at least most of the season. That includes both the rookie year and the sophomore year. Also, I will not be including people who are currently in their sophomore season, because people like Cole Custer are on their way to being on this list, but they have time to turn their season around. Also, this will be in NASCAR's modern era, which spans from 1972 until today. I would like to include a lot of the older ones, but it just gets really hard to judge off the metrics of it, just because a lot of people didn't make most of the races in their rookie year or their sophomore year or both, and it was just a much different, uncomparable era to today. So without further ado, let's get into it. Number 10 is Bobby Labonte. Now I'm going to be honest about Labonte. His rookie year and sophomore year aren't too much different. I put him on this list more or less because there really aren't too many major sophomore slumps in NASCAR. It is a pretty linear sport when it comes to rookie year to the next, but Bobby Labonte was in Bill Davis's 22 car. He ran respectably with the car, finished 19th in points, had a 19.1 average finish and 6 top 10s. Again, pretty respectable for the way the car was running at the time. The next year was about the same. He actually did get a top 5 finish, but he had less top 10s, and on top of that, he finished lower in points. There's not really much to add, as both seasons are pretty mediocre at best, and they're about the same, just with a short fall backwards for Labonte between years. Plus, I think he won out in the end when he went to Joe Gibbs Racing. Number 9 is Juan Pablo Montoya. Montoya came over to NASCAR in 2007 as part of the open wheel invasion, and to be completely honest, he did really well. Most people who come over to NASCAR from other motorsports usually don't do so hot. It's just something that is really hard to pick up even for the best drivers ever. Just look at Montoya's career overall. One of the best drivers to ever live, and a lot of NASCAR fans think he's mediocre. So I'll cut him some slack a little bit. His 2007 season had a win, and that came at Sonoma, partly due to fuel mileage, but he did have to make his way through the pack multiple times. So I'll say that Montoya earned that win, and at one of NASCAR's most talent-based tracks at that. Then you also add the fact that he had 3 top 5s and 6 top 10s, and got a top 20 points finish. And you gotta say that Montoya had a pretty good rookie year. Well, you go to 2008, and everything is pretty much cut in half. He didn't get a win. He got 1 less top 5. He had 3 less top 10s. His average finish went down. And on top of that, he finished 25th in points. The problem for Montoya that year is just they were slow. And when they weren't slow, they were wrecking. It just was an absolutely terrible way to follow it up. But to be fair, he did make the chase the next year in 2009. So not everything was bad. Number 8 is Rusty Wallace. Now, Rusty Wallace today is known as one of the best drivers to ever live, but in his rookie year, well, it was okay at best. In 1984, he got 2 top 5s and 4 top 10s, but he did finish a respectable 14th in points. Now, at the time, the level of competition was lower, but still, finishing that high up in the Cup Series at that time was a pretty good and impressive moment. Well, in 1985, he came back and he got more top 10s. That's the weird part of this sophomore slump. He actually, if you look at some of the numbers, did perform better. The biggest problem is that he had tons and tons of DNFs. Most of Wallace's problems weren't of his own making, it was just more engine issues. Number 7 was Jeff Burton. Jeff Burton was the 1994 Rookie of the Year. Now granted, he didn't have the greatest competition base against him, but still, 1 Rookie of the Year honors. Well, in 1994, in 30 starts, he had 2 top 5s and 3 top 10s, and he finished 24th in points. Not the greatest finish in points, but you know what? It was something that could be built off of. In this time, he drove for the Stavola brothers team, and the team was on the way down. this really wasn't as much of Burton's fault as it was the fact that the team he was on a downward trend. And the next year rolls around, and instead of finishing in top 20 in points, he finished 32nd in the standings, and all of his statistical metrics went down, all of his performance went down, the speed was down. It really wasn't Burton's fault. At number 6 is Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Now, Stenhouse didn't have the greatest 2013 season. Let's be real, he really hasn't had the greatest career overall so far. But in 2013, against Danica Patrick, he won Rookie of the Year. And he didn't do so hot, let's just be real. He had a top 5 and 3 top 10s, but he did finish in the top 20 in points, which was kind of impressive, but at the same time, in a team that did so well with Matt Kenseth the year before, no one really cared. But in 2014, he looked to try and build on that. And if you look at a couple statistical metrics, yeah, sure he did. He had another top 5, and he had 5 top 10s this time. The problem was he just could not finish well in the other 31 races. He dropped 8 positions in points between 13 and 14. He went down to 27th in the standings the next year. At number 5, we have Bruce Hill.
Who?
He was the 1975 Rookie of the Year, and he actually did run pretty well. Running for his own independent team, he had 3 top 5s and 11 top 10s in his first season in 26 starts. Not bad, plus he finished 16th in the points. Well, as is the case with a lot of independent drivers who might start off well, things go downhill as soon as money needs to be crunched over time, and that's what happened over the course of his career. So the next year in 76, he only had 22 starts he could make, didn't get a top 5 this time, 4 top 10s, 23rd in points, and that was really just the trend of his career with his own team. Over time, he would run less and less races, he would have less and less funding, and the team would have less and less results. At number 4, we have Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin's rookie year was nothing short of phenomenal. He swept the Pocono races, he made the chase in his first season, and he was a championship contender, finishing 3rd in the standings. Really, anything other than the championship would be considered a sophomore slump. And when you look at his next year, while he had one less win, he was relatively just as consistent. The problem this time is that when he and his team faltered, it was at the exact wrong time to do so, during the 12-man chase. So from year to year, he went from a championship contender to the last man in the chase. He even finished behind Martin Truex Jr., who was with a dying DEI team. Denny Hamlin definitely has to be on this list for sophomore slumps. Entering the podium, we have a short track legend, Dick Trickle, who had a slumping 1990 season after his 1989 season. Well, in 1989, Dick Trickle had his rookie year with the Stavola brothers. And this is a team that had won in previous seasons with Bobby Allison and Bobby Hillin Jr. And it looked like, for the most part, Trickle took advantage of it. The team might not have been doing as well as the years before, but he did have the best performing team in his rookie year. The problem was he had 8 DNFs. So if that could be shored up, he might be able to put together a really solid 1990 season. And to start off that season, he did run well. At points, he was in the top 10 in the standings. The big problem, again, would be DNFs. In 1990, he had 13 DNFs. That, in and of itself, is a huge-ass number, but then you add the fact that there were less races that year, and the fact that 6 of those DNFs were all in the last 6 races of the year, and you can see that even though he had a relatively solid season building, it all went away due to the fact that they just could not keep their stuff together. At runner-up, we have someone who is all too familiar with NASCAR fans today, Kyle Larson. Kyle Larson's 2014 rookie season was one that really gets overshadowed a lot because he missed the playoffs that year. But the deal was, he was almost in the top 10 every other week. He was somebody who was up front competing for wins, and if it wasn't for a few incidents in the regular season, he probably makes the 16-man chase. I mean, when people talk about Kyle Larson's start to his career, they literally always go back to 2014 at Chicagoland when he competed with guys like Harvick, Keselowski, and Gordon for top 5 spots and the win. So we saw from the beginning that Kyle Larson was an incredible talent. especially since he did this in a Chip Ganassi Chevrolet. While in 2015, he took a huge step down. While in points it doesn't look like that big of a deal, only going from 17th to 19th, the fact that as good as he wasn't the top guy who missed it, if he even missed it at all, is pretty shocking. Then you also add to the fact that they had 6 less top 5s and 7 less top 10s, and their average finish was nearly down to 20th. And you can see that this was a huge step downwards for Larson. But I have to say, after recent events, I think Larson has recovered pretty well in his career. Now at the number 1 spot, we have Kasey Kahne. Now, a lot of people might look at it and be like, why would you have the guy who went winless in his rookie year be in a sophomore slump after he won in his sophomore year? Well, it's because every other available metric for Kahne shows that this year was down. Less top 5s, less top 10s, lower points finish, slower cars all around. Kasey Kahne in 2005 was probably the biggest disappointment outside of Jeff Gordon and Dale Jr. struggling. And it's not hard to see why. I mean, in 2004, this guy literally was getting made fun of in NASCAR on Fox pre-race shows because he finished second so much. Everyone knew that he was the next phenom. Everyone knew this guy could be like the next Jeff Gordon. It was any moment that he was just gonna break out and have a string of wins and be a championship contender. Except it didn't happen in 2005. Yes, he got that Richmond win, but other than that, the season was utterly forgettable. He went from finishing 13th in the point standings to 23rd, the biggest drop of anybody on this list. But he did recover in 2006 and won 6 races, so it wasn't all bad for Kahne, but it was the start of his up and down career that we would see for the next decade and a half. And with that, we come to the end of this list. I want to ask you now, who do you think had the biggest sophomore slump in NASCAR history? Of course, this is Cup, so which one? Was I right? Was it Kasey Kahne or was it somebody else on the list? Let me know down in the comments below. Alright, leave a like on this video, share this video, and subscribe to the channel for more great NASCAR content. Until next time, have a good one.